Now, what the president fails to recognize, it's not just Republicans who want Obamacare tossed to the curb. It's you, the American people, which is exactly why my next guests have been leading the charge to defund this train wreck from day one. Joining me now, live in studio tonight, Texas Senator Ted Cruz, Utah Senator Mike Lee. Gentlemen, good to see you. Welcome.
Sean, great to join you.
I'll give you an air high five, sort of like an air kiss. How you doing? Good to see you.
It's great to be with you.
All right. This is now front and center. The CBO came out with numbers this week. You want to explain what they said?
Well, look, Obamacare is killing jobs. It is the #1 job killer in this country, and we're getting more and more bipartisan consensus on exactly that. More and more Americans are losing their jobs. More and more Americans are being forced into part-time work. More and more Americans are seeing their health insurance premiums skyrocket, and more Americans are losing their health insurance.
Yeah, you know, there was a meeting of franchisees in Washington. Then we have SeaWorld. Then we had 603 small businesses surveyed. Here's what they said. Obamacare is the single biggest factor driving the economy, driving the growth in the economy and mandatory health care spending. They point out Obamacare raises taxes by $770 billion over the next 10 years. Senator Mike Lee, they say it's unsustainable.
It is unsustainable. It's going to kill jobs. It's going to result in a lot of people either losing their jobs, not being able to get jobs, or having their hours reduced. Doctors hate it because it'll interfere with their ability to practice medicine. Families hate it because most families recognize that this will make their family's health care situation worse, not better. The American people are coming together, and they're standing together, and they're saying, please defund this law. I want to applaud House Speaker John Boehner, who did the courageous thing today and stood with the American people. We now need to stand with him and with the people and defund this law.
I applaud him, but I will tell you this. It was a very different tune that they were playing last week in the House leadership, and it was really the people of this country that I would say forced them to change positions, because they came up with that parliamentary maneuver last week, which would defund Obamacare and fund it at the same time. So,
well, but today's announcement is a big deal. You know, a few weeks ago, early in the Obamacare defund fight, every graybeard in Washington said there's no chance of this going forward. And today is a victory for House conservatives that stuck their neck out, that endured a lot of criticism. And today is a victory for Speaker Boehner. And I agree with Mike. I commend House leadership for listening to the American people. They did their job. They stood up. And this is a bold decision. And I look forward to working with Mike to fight in the Senate to support this decision for us to succeed in defunding Obamacare.
All right. There seems to be a lot of misunderstanding. Explain what you first proposed, because you really got the ball started here.
Sure. What I proposed from the very outset was that we agree that we would fund government and defund Obamacare. I have never wanted a shutdown, never called for a shutdown. I want to avoid a shutdown. What I'm saying is that we ought to fund every other priority in government. Ted and I and others are willing to fund even programs that we don't like as a compromise gesture in order to avoid having to fund Obamacare, and as a condition for making it possible to defund Obamacare and thereby achieve a delay. That's what we want. And what I'm saying is that, you know, they passed this thing without a single Republican vote 3 years ago. Since then, this law and what we know about it has not improved. Since then, it was unconstitutionally rewritten twice by the Supreme Court. It was unconstitutionally rewritten 3 or 4 or 5 more times by the President. This is not okay, and it's proving to be increasingly unaffordable. And so what we need to do is say, let's keep everything else in government funded at current levels as required by the Budget Control Act, but let's defund Obamacare and delay it.
You know what the critics are saying, and I have been arguing with conservatives because they keep coming back. Hannity, we want it gone as bad as you do, but tactically it's not the smartest thing to do, because you know that the Republicans will get blamed for the shutdown and the media will blame them. How do you answer that?
Well, the answer is that we've got to win. We've got to respond to the American people, and there's a series of steps. The first step, and what Mike and I have devoted every waking moment for the past several months to doing, is motivating and energizing the American people. You know, we've seen in just a matter of weeks over 1.3 million Americans go to don'tfundit.com, sign a national petition, call their representatives, call their senators. Look, today's decision is a victory for the American people. Those 1.3 million Americans, and an awful lot of them came as a result of your show, that went and signed that petition and spoke out, today the House of Representatives answered the call. Now the ball's in Harry Reid's hands. And Harry Reid needs to listen to the American people just like John Boehner did. Now, I can guarantee you one thing. Mike and I are going to fight with every breath in our body. As Churchill said, we will fight on the beaches, we will fight on the streets, we will fight at every step to stop the biggest job killer in America.
You're going to talk about blood, toil, sweat, and tears. All right. Let's talk about, all right, Boehner, I'm assuming now the House will go forward with a CR that defunds Obamacare. Walk us, the House passes that, goes to the Senate. What happens next?
Okay, so what happens next after it passes the House is that at that moment, once the House passes this, the only people who can produce a government shutdown at that point are Harry Reid and the Senate Democrats and the President of the United States. If they are willing to say to the American people, look, because you want to defund Obamacare, even though you're willing to fund everything else in government, we're going to shut down the government, I don't think they can win that fight. I don't think they can make a persuasive case to the American people that Obamacare, this law that's not ready to be implemented, this law that's going to make health care unaffordable and is being unfairly implemented, not to mention unconstitutionally altered by the President. They cannot win the argument that they should fight this and that they should shut down the government simply because they want to stand behind this law that the American people fundamentally reject.
Well, then respond to the President, because he said today that it's never happened in the history of the country, the threat of to extort a president or a governing party and trying to force issues that have nothing to do with the budget, nothing to do with the debt. What's your reaction? Is this extortion, as he says?
Oh, well, no, it's certainly not that. And I was a little thrown off by his comments at first because he seemed to be talking about the debt limit. And this is not about the debt limit. This is about funding government. Now, if he wants to talk about matters that are unprecedented in American constitutional history, it's this. This new major entitlement program with its unprecedented cost that was rammed through both houses of Congress without anyone having read it, without a single bipartisan vote. That's unprecedented. Rewriting that law 5 times, that's unprecedented.
So let me just be clear. So you will pay our debts, our obligations, you will fund the military, you will fund every department, you will fund Medicare, Social Security, everything will be funded, but you're saying don't fund Obamacare. Now, constitutionally, you're an attorney and former attorney general. That's legal, isn't that in the Constitution, that spending begins in Congress?
Well, not only that, that is the most important check Congress has on an overreaching executive, the power of the purse. Listen, this is a president who sadly has disregarded the law over and over and over. And when it comes to Obamacare, he's been picking and choosing political favorites. So he granted exemptions to every big corporation in America, totally contrary to law. He granted exemptions to every member of Congress, totally contrary to law. This fight, Sean, very simply is about one question. Will hardworking American families get the same exemption that President Obama has given big corporations and members of Congress? That's what this fight's about, and we've got the power of the purse under the Constitution the Congress has to force the executive to treat the American people fairly.
All right, guys, stay right there. We're going to come back, and when Hannity returns.
I think Speaker Boehner is very much engaged in trying to deal with what everybody in your business has accurately reported as essentially an all-out civil war within the Republican Party.
All right, strong words out of the White House. Senators Cruz and Lee will respond directly to Jay Carney. Senators Ted Cruz and Mike Lee. All right, you know, you guys have even had to deal with Senator McCain calling you wacko bird. You have talked about a surrender caucus, which, by the way, I think there has been a lack of backbone among Republicans. There seems to be, you two, Rand Paul and Marco Rubio, seem to be the new energized conservative base in the party in the Senate. Is that a fair characterization?
Well, you know, I appreciate Jay Carney's very sincere concern about the Republican Party. You know, what I will say is actually today is a remarkable day of unity. Today, I think, is a victory for the Speaker. And indeed, I would make a plea today to the 46 Senate Republicans that today is a day for party unity, that every Senate Republican should stand with Republicans in the House, should stand with conservatives, and should stand with the American people. Now this has been a journey. 2 months ago, a lot of people were very nervous about this fight, but what's happened in the last 2 months is over 1.3 million Americans have gone to don'tfundit.com. The American people have been lighting up the phones, and Republicans are listening. I am hopeful. I believe every Senate Republican should stand with the House And I believe ultimately even the Senate Democrats, if their constituents speak out in sufficient numbers, will have no choice but help the American people avert this train wreck.
Red state senators, Mary Landrieu, and some others are going to find themselves in a difficult position here. Let me ask you this, because a lot of attention has been given to Congressman Graves' plan, which is that if you cannot, to delay it if you can't defund it. Where do you stand on that?
Well, I support Congressman Graves. Essentially, what the House is putting forward for a vote is the Graves plan. And one thing I should be clear about, Sean, is that in order to delay Obamacare, to delay it completely really requires you to defund it. So defunding is a method, in other words, of delaying. And so that's what we're doing. I support Tom Graves, and I'm proud to be on his side.
So really defunding is delay. The law is still the law, but you're not funding it, so you're delaying it.
That's right. That's how we delay it, is by defunding it. And there really is no other way to do it. And so that's why I'm proud to support Representative Graves in that. And I salute him. I salute Speaker John Boehner for bringing this forward. He's standing with the American people. He's listened to what they're saying. Now I hope that the Senate Democrats will also stand with the American people and hear their pleas for mercy on this, because this is a bad law. This is a law that's going to hurt a lot of people. And it's not an issue of just Republican versus Democrat or liberal versus conservative. This is an American issue, and we've got to stand with the people on it.
One of the things I hear from people, and I know that a lot of congressmen and senators got an earful when they went back for their August recess, but what I hear from a lot of people when I talk to them is they want solutions. Interestingly, the House Republicans are going to unveil a health care bill to replace Obamacare. In large part, it's only a 200-page bill, which by Washington standards is fairly small. $20,000 in tax deductions for families, $7,500 deduction for individuals. Is this the solution you support, or do you have a different solution?
Well, I think the broad parameters laid out are a step in the right direction. We haven't yet had the opportunity to study the particulars, but I think it is absolutely right that Republicans should be standing for pro-market, pro-competition health care reforms that empower consumers, that allow interstate competition, that create a 50-state market, and that make health care personal, portable, and affordable.
All of that's in there.
And that disempower government. I mean, the difference is Obamacare says federal government bureaucrats will get between you and your doctor. That's not what the American people want. It's why a large majority of Americans have turned against Obamacare. It's why the unions are jumping ship, because this thing isn't working.
That's one of the more interesting developments here, and a lot of franchise owners, big business, small business, SeaWorld, they're reducing people's hours. It's having a big impact. What would be your solution or answer to replace Obamacare?
You know, Sean, last year I introduced something called the Saving the American Dream Plan. It was a comprehensive budget overhaul package, a budget that would have balanced within 5 years. As part of it, I proposed a set of tax credits, a tax credit system that would allow Americans to purchase health insurance using tax credits, and this would put them in charge of their own health care situation. And just like what Ted was describing.
This is similar to what the House has offered.
Yes, similar to what the House has offered in that respect. It would create a 50-state market. It would allow for portability, and it would make health care more affordable. It would also allow people to carry their insurance policy with them, not only across state lines, but also from job to job. And that's really what we need to do here. The point is, Sean, that there are a lot of solutions out there. People on the left have been fond of saying Republicans offer no proposal of their own. It simply isn't true. We've got an abundance of these kinds of proposals. We just need the chance to put them forward. We're confident that the American people will prefer them greatly to Obamacare, which puts D.C. bureaucrats in charge of the most personal decisions people have to make.
All right, I think we explained it well. Where do you think this ends up? Because obviously we got a deadline October 1. Where's it going to end up?
Okay, so the next thing that's going to happen is it's going to come over to the Senate after it passes the House. And at that point, we have to watch out for a few things. First of all, we have to look out for those who will say that once we've had a vote in the House, or perhaps once we've had a vote in the Senate, that's it. That's all we need. That a vote equals a victory. There is a difference between a vote and a victory, and we have to remember that this will not be either won or lost with a single legislative volley from one side of the Capitol to the other. This, like so many other big legislative debates, might well take several volleys between House and Senate. Ted and I and others in the Senate intend to stand strongly behind the American people and with our counterparts in the House of Representatives to make sure that we defund
anything
Obamacare.
short of a defunding? You will vote for nothing short of a defund.
Oh, I don't think we can. In this circumstance, in order to stop this law, in order to delay it, you really do have to strip out the funding. And I think the American people demand and deserve nothing less than that. Because if you simply say, let's just delay the individual mandate, for example.
It's not going to do much.
It's not going to do much.
What about the mandatory spending versus discretionary? That keeps coming up.
See, the language we've introduced and the language that's in the Graves bill prohibits both mandatory and discretionary spending. Now, it's got to be passed into law. And what Mike said was important. This is not going to be a single shot. This is going to be an iterative process. This first CR passing the House is the first step. It's going to go to the Senate. But Harry Reid's got 54 Democrats, and from everything Harry Reid has said, he's likely to dig in and threaten to shut everything down to preserve Obamacare.
So it's going to get hot.
It's going to get hot. The first thing we need to do is we need to get Senate Republicans to stand together and to stand with House Republicans. And I can assure you, Mike and I are going to do everything.
Happen? Why do I not see John McCain doing this?
Well, you know, hopefully every Senate Republican will listen to the people. But I'll tell you what's critical. I would urge every one of your listeners, if you've already signed the petition at don'tfundit.com, let me urge you in the next week to find 3 friends to go sign that petition at don'tfundit.com. Okay. And if you haven't signed it, go do it now. But the next step is it is very likely to go back to the House. And listen, whether we win or lose is going to be decided in the House of Representatives. Today, John Boehner showed leadership. House conservatives showed leadership. Mike and I are going to fight with every breath we have, but the House is going to win or lose this fight.
If they want these guys to have a spine, it's really going to be up to the American people, because the louder they are, then the more likely they'll be politically courageous.